Project Sapient is a podcast meant to engage our brothers and sisters in the law enforcement and military communities in conversations that we all know we need to have. All opinions you hear are our own, and they are protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. They are in no way reflect or are meant to reflect the opinion of any specific agency, officer, or service member. Some opinions may be controversial. Listener discretion is advised. Enjoy. All right, everyone, welcome back to Project Sapient, where we move in lightning speed these days. Had some phenomenal guests for the past several months, and the latest stuff with a company called Whoop and their devices have been been awesome in the training world, especially when it comes to resiliency training and stress exposure or stress inoculation type training. It really, to me, it's revolutionized how I train personally, how I train others too, whether it's anything from, scenario based to CQB to even recovery and learning how to adapt to whatever life throws at you. I mean, the device is definitely very, very, very different than a lot of the other devices I've tried over the years. But, more on that. Like I said, I'll be up at SIG Academy working with those guys at their combatives section or self-defense section and, introducing Whoop up there. And that way, whoever is in that class will be able to monitor how they're doing, where they're doing cognitively once, you hit that cognitive overload. Really, really exciting stuff. And, more to come with that. So I figured this episode, it's actually funny. So you guys all know Chuck Ritter, who's been on the show before numerous times, and now I'm editor-in-chief at Objective Arte, introduced me to a fellow SF guy that he knows, Green Beret, who is now retired and started his own, call it, podcast company or a podcast type, and it's called Lesser Known Operators. And joining us today is Nick. So, hey, Nick, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming on. I know past couple times I wanted you on, but my job friggin' keeps me busy,
No, I completely understand. You've got real life stuff to do where the most exciting thing I have to do is make funny reels so that I can chase likes and comments and all that. So I understand.
So yeah, tell everyone a little about yourself. When did you join the military? I'm assuming you're with the the September 11th crew, where after 9/11 we all raised our right hand and joined. So, but go right ahead, tell your story, man.
Oh God, I think in 2001 I was like 13 years old, so I had to wait a little bit. But no, I joined the military in 2011, originally enlisted as a field artilleryman.
Oh, fellow field artilleryman. That's what I did.
Oh, really? So you know about Fort Sill as well?
Oh, I know all about Fort Sill.
Yeah. So what day's today? Monday. So it's scooters on Thursdays then?
Yeah. So I don't know if you were saying, so I was in Charlie Battery, 1st and the 40th. That was my basic in AIT.
I was in Delta, 1st to the 40th.
Okay. All right. So you were in the same battalion then?
Yep. Same building, just one over. Yeah. So 2011. Yeah. Delta Company, awesome. 1st to the 40th, field artillery. Really? So graduated basic AIT, and then I thought I was going to get somewhere cool for finishing at the top of my class twice, and I got stationed at Fort Sill as punishment for being a high achiever. So I went to my squad leader and I said, hey, I'm going to go to the Special Forces brief, probably 7 days after I got to my unit.
Oh,
And then
no
90
shit.
days later, I went to selection and hurt myself the first time through, came back, trained back up, and passed the second time. Went airborne school through the Q course, finished near the top of my class again. The only reason I say that is because it became so important to me later. Because as soon as I got to my team, probably 60 days after we went on our first training mission as a team, and I sustained 3 concussions in a 24-hour period.
Holy
And
shit.
paired up with my medical history prior to that, I had some symptoms that were evidently not going to go away. So I was kind of put into a support role and was able to do 3 more years doing that, bouncing around from Fort Lewis to Korea, back and forth a few times. Our unit came down on orders for Afghanistan in 2018, and the policy at the time was deploy or get out. So I could not get back to Korea fast enough. So I got medically retired at the end of 2018.
Oh, wow. Were you, I mean, so how did you meet Chuck?
Probably from one of my cold messages. So the podcast started, I woke up a couple days into this new year and I just said to the wife, hey, I'm going to start a podcast today. And started Googling things, went through my contacts in my phone.
Yeah.
I quickly ran out of people to interview in my phone because I didn't really keep up with people once I got out. So I just started cold messaging people on Instagram. And I think Chuck was one of those folks that I introduced myself to. It's kind of weird because just jumping into the DMs going, hey, you don't know me, but I promise I was a Green Beret. And will you come on my show and talk about it?
That's a great way to cold chat people, right?
I thought I would have worse numbers, but I got about 50%. If they checked the message, it was almost always a yes. But getting them to check that other folder on Instagram has been the hard part because you're not following each other, then it doesn't go directly to them.
Yeah, that's what I noticed with Instagram. Actually, that was much later. I noticed with the Instagram and with the Project Sapient podcast, and I noticed that all of a sudden this showed up this other box, and I'm like, what's this? Because people will tell me like, hey, we sent you a message. I'm like, what? So I'll go and oh, all right, now I have an other box, so I got to check that now every time.
And then inside that other box, there's a hidden messages tab too that you've got to click. If Instagram thinks it's spam.
Yeah.
Which when I just started out, I had 2 followers. It thought I was spam. So,
so that's funny. Probably all the younger generation folks are laughing at us right now. Like, yeah, you old dudes don't know anything about Instagram.
Oh, I don't claim to know.
I don't either.
I defer to somebody. I look up shit that most people half my age know as general knowledge all the time, and I don't feel bad about it. There's a YouTube video for everything.
Oh yeah, no, ain't that the truth? So just real quick, back to your days as a Green Beret. What unit were you a part of?
So I was assigned to 3rd Battalion, 1st Special Forces Group out in Fort Lewis, Washington.
Okay, and your AO was Korea,
or
AOR?
Really, where all I spent my time, but our area of responsibility is Asia and Southeast Asia.
Okay, gotcha. And if you don't mind me asking, I mean, you said you had prior injuries. Was that from basic, or was that even before that?
So I played sports as a kid, and I seemed to always get hit in the head.
Oh.
I remember, from crashing my bicycle and landing on my face to soccer, being goalie and taking a kick to the head.
Oh, yeah.
Even when I was bartending, you try to break up a fight and you get hit.
Yeah.
So bad luck there.
Yeah.
And then wrestling. I think I got 2 concussions in wrestling, which you're like, how does that happen? Well, it just seemed always to happen to me. So I had a history of that when I was a civilian, and then I got in and I did not stop that trend. I got knocked out in pugils in basic training.
Really?
Pugils? I got to my unit. Yeah, right in the chin.
Oh, wow.
Just a poke.
Wow.
As hard. It's like a running out. And the drill sergeant's like, you better get up or you're going to go to the hospital. Okay, man, I'll get up. I don't know what the fuck happened though. But got to my unit and they send you to combatives.
Yep.
Well, the instructors were, I don't know why, but they were very violent with the people there. And they're like going for a clinch. Well, the guy comes up with an uppercut as I'm going for the clinch and just rocks me.
Oh,
So
geez.
that was only a couple months after I'd gotten hit in basic.
Yep.
And then so now there, I go to selection. I remember catching a pipe to the back of the head when we were doing the down pilot team week event. I get in the course. I got into SEER, and I don't know if you're familiar with SEER.
Yep. Yep. I am.
I guess all I can say here is we were about to be liberated, and one of the cadre hit me. It felt like as hard as he could.
Yeah.
Allegedly. He allegedly hit me as hard as he could.
Yeah.
And that was another one there. And then I graduated not too long after that, and went to my unit. We go out on the ocean. A litany of things went wrong or were done wrong in preparation for us doing this training on the ocean.
Yep.
The big ones were we were supposed to be out in 3 to 5 foot waves, and we were out in 12 to 15 foot waves.
Oh, geez.
We were supposed to have 55 horsepower engines. I think we had the 35 horsepower engines. Supposed to have 6 guys in the boat. We had 5 guys in the boat, and then we kicked out 2 rescue swimmers, which would have been fine, but we put the rescue swimmers out at the wrong point.
Oh,
so we
Jesus.
were in the surf when we did that. So our boat became extremely light. And after the swimmers went out, only one person in each boat had experience driving a boat on the ocean. So it was just me and another new guy who had just gotten to the team. We turned around and went back, tried to go back out to sea, so it was a little less rough. And we went up the wave, and I kept going up into the air as the boat went back to the ocean.
Man.
And I came back down on my face,
knocked
me out into the water. And they pull me in, and I kind of come to, and they're like, okay, we're going to shore. Well, we flipped over right away, right after that. And the engine come off the transom, and it's hanging by the wire. So when we finally got the Zodiac righted, I was pulling the engine back on the lanyard, and as I set it on the transom, a wave come up, lifted it off the transom into my head again.
Oof.
So that was 2. And then so we gave up at a certain point because we were mission ineffective at that point. So we just would flip over, swim back to the boat, kind of drape ourselves over the side, flip over, do the same thing until we got back to shore a couple hours later. I probably would have recovered if they would have sent me home at that point.
Yeah.
They did not send me home. And I hit my head on a door frame of a vehicle the next day, and then fell and hit my head on the concrete.
Jeez, man.
So, at that point, I started having shooting pains in my head and throwing up. Yeah. And those symptoms would last for a couple of years.
Yeah, there you go, TBI. That's my God.
Yeah. It was just all added up. I don't think any of them individually would have done anything, but the one bad day linked up with all the history and everything they're kind of discovering now. But I was pretty, how do I put it? What's the word? I don't think devastated is the right word, but something, if you can, maybe there isn't a word in English for it, but I was pretty torn up about it for a long time. And now I've kind of gotten a lot better about it. I still will never get over it, but I'm a lot better with it now.
Oh, that's the thing. I mean, like I get it. It you take so much time out of your life to get that Green Beret, right? To get that training and fucking, it's like what is it? I think it's 2 years, right? Literally, it's 2 years worth of training. About 2 years of training, and then you get to your unit only to get injured even more, and then like you said, all the litany of issues, they're caught up with the final, whether it was a final hit to the head or whatever, whatever it was. And now you're non-deployable, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, all this work, if they, if the military properly rested you, maybe that the outcome would have been different. And even me back even way before you, because I went in 2002. I deployed to Iraq 2005. So it didn't. I didn't stay long at home. I deployed right away, and for me as a kid, I was very athletic. So yeah, I've had I played football and soccer, martial arts, full contact type fighting, and yeah, so I've been rocked numerous times as a kid. And one of them playing indoor soccer. And have you played indoor soccer?
No, I know it's kind of rough.
Oh yeah, it's extreme. It's extremely physical. It's like holy shit. I didn't realize how physical it was, but I loved it in the end. I'm like hell yeah, I loved it. But I remember the dude tackling me, and I went head first into the boards. And dude, you're talking flashing lights, everything. I was laying there just sprawled out. I was I think 16, 17 at the time. I mean, I was still pretty young when that happened, and that's just one of many things, and the one that really got me was in Iraq when a car hit us at like 80 miles an hour, and we were still we were an up armored Humvee, but I got knocked out, completely knocked out, and I was out for like a few seconds. I thought we got hit by an IED and stuff like that. And I remember going back to the medic tent, to check me because I had a huge lump right here, like massive. And I was wearing my Kevlar, everything, seat belted in, all that stuff too. So it tells you how hard we got hit. And medics, here's ibuprofen, wrap your head, put ice, and Charlie Mike, continue mission. I'm like, all right, I didn't think nothing of it. And then that's when when I got home, that's when I start to notice like the issues that is associated with that. The tinnitus, the headaches, the sensitivity to light, stuff like that.
Everything that we used to do to treat a headache or a head injury turned out to be wrong as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you got to keep them awake. No, you don't. They need rest. Their brain needs to rest and reset.
Yep.
And all these things. And then, like, even with the military, right? You could have a normal concussion or even a bad one. And then, but you think you're giving them time to heal, but there's MTBIs, micro TBIs,
yep.
where you could go to the range and be firing your weapon. And that's just shaking the shit out of your brain.
Yep.
And you're causing more symptoms than you realize. So there's all kinds of stuff. Yeah, if you properly get the time to reset and heal from it. But that's one thing. But the military doesn't work that way.
No.
And I've said this on my show a few times. No matter what they say or all the programs that they have, the military does not give a fuck about you.
Yeah.
Your job is to be there to fill the billet and do the job they ask you to do. And if you're sick, they'll find somebody else to do it. And I understand fully that is what we signed up for.
Yep.
I get that. I don't hold anything against them for not giving a shit about me.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I mean, you're 100% right, because I got medically discharged myself because, back injury and my head injury and whatever else. And literally, for me at the time, I was pissed off because, here I am, I speak Arabic, I'm, getting ready to deploy again. I was ready to go. And they just completely railroaded me, literally. It felt like that. And it's like, well, you can't be combat effective with injuries. I'm like, have you talked to any other combat vet in the military? There's not one that doesn't have some sort of injury from being deployed and, wearing an IBA, at the time we called them IBAs, that were 60, 70 pounds weighing and running around the desert. It's like, there's not one veteran who does not have some sort of back pain or herniated disc or something. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, they were so quick to literally medically discharge me. It's like, here you go, see you later. I'm like, all right. And it goes back to also my feeling as a cop, in law enforcement, whether you're SWAT and you do this, like I've done, I've been blessed to do all sorts of cool stuff at work, but in the end, no matter what, you're a number. And that's it. No matter how, because you see like a lot of guys, I'm sure you see it too, like, some like guys like Chuck and some other Green Berets that I know, close friends of mine that have since retired. It's like they've been pushed off. Like, okay, great retirement, great job, thank you. And now they moved on to the next guy. And that's it, And like you said, we all know we signed up for that. We all get it,
It's a relationship. But it's one-sided, and we don't think it's going to end, and then we're not ready for it when it does. Inevitably, it's going to end. And now, if I was as clear-headed then as I am now, and as wily and had situational awareness and kind of knew more about the system, I would probably still be in. But then I didn't have that. I was mad about the situation I was in. I wasn't thinking clearly. The unit was in Afghanistan. They were deployed. I was getting back to retired. I was mad, so I wasn't thinking about it. But if I had just had that 30,000 foot view, I probably could have slithered my way into a support role where I could still have had my beret on and supported guys.
Yeah.
And still done my job, which I liked doing, but I wasn't in that headspace, and maybe I went about it wrong, but that's it. I got medically retired and here I am. But as a bonus, I get a check on the first of every month and I'm afraid of the ocean. So
there you go. Oh man. But it's funny, just the litany of stuff that we learned about head injuries. And like you said, back even before your time, can you imagine what '05 what it was like for head injuries? Those things never fucking existed. They're like, yeah. Nope, you still like I said, all they did was patch me up. Ibuprofen, here's ibuprofen, drink some water, Charlie Mike, and you're good to go. I mean, I was running around with my Kevlar with a friggin' pad in front because of, the big lump I had, and I was still running around and still up all night doing ops and doing all kinds of different things. And it didn't really, the studies weren't there. Well, but I'll say this is the studies were there for the NFL and sport players, but the studies weren't around for the military and the concussions and all that stuff, especially the way at the rate that we were at war. I felt like the medical industry was not even prepared to receive the amount of head injuries that now they're watching and monitoring. I mean, how do you feel? I mean, I'm sure you probably see the same thing that I've seen. Now a word from our sponsors and supporters. Objective Arte. Objective Arte is an amazing new initiative that was started by retired Command Sergeant Major Chuck Ritter and a retired Special Forces officer, Greg Walker. They are both retired Special Forces soldiers, done some amazing things during GWOT. I mean, some of the stuff that they do even now for the veteran community, for their fellow SOF SF members, truly, truly amazing. So Chuck approached me to this new idea called Objective Arte. Now, arte is a Greek word. All right, it's not just a word. It's a call to action. It challenges us to improve ourselves every day, reminding us that while life is finite, our journey continues until the very end. And he asked me to be editor-in-chief, which I'm truly, truly honored to be included in this project, in this Objective Arte. So head over to objectivearte.com. We have journals, everyone that contributes. I go through and publish their writing pieces. They have a podcast, Objective Arte, that is run by Mike Lorario, who's also a veteran himself. And I mean, it's just starting off. I mean, it's amazing to see how quickly it's growing. So they are on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Head over there, give it a like, share. And if you want to contribute, reach out to me, Ayman, at objectivearte.com. That's my email address. That's AYM as in Mike, AN as in November, at objectivearte.com. And feel free to submit your writing pieces or any and all ideas that you have. And I will be more than happy to reach out and speak with you and get you published on Objective Arte.
Man, mine's a much darker view on it even. They really dodged a bullet because everybody drowned their symptoms with booze.
Yeah.
The class 6 is always open, and you get back from deployment, you're fucked up, you got a concussion, you lost somebody, you're depressed, and you can just go to the class 6 and get some booze and make the symptoms go away.
Yeah.
But other symptoms might come up.
Yep.
So what could have happened didn't even happen because unfortunately guys were self-medicating and stuff, guys and gals, and then not taking it seriously. And then other symptoms arise, anger, depression, violent tendencies, and things like that. So other things got dealt with. And now they're getting kicked out of the military because they didn't want to go to sick call or they didn't want to raise their hand and say, I need help. So other things happen. And then they have an investigation. They're found at fault for doing X, Y, and Z when ABC contributed to it, getting blown up, but never documenting it and things like that. So you wonder why, we had this suicide epidemic. It's because, and these are just contributing factors. I'm not saying this is one or the other.
Yeah.
The up tempo and the stress on your mental health is not paramount. It's the mission.
Yep.
And when the mission is first, the soldiers understand that I can't take a knee because my brothers to my left and brothers and sisters to my left and right, they need me. I'm not going to not be there for them because I'll feel worse if I'm not there.
Yeah.
And then that leads into, well, I got to make myself feel better. Let me figure out how to self-medicate without going to sick call or without going to mental health and the fake stigma that comes along with that. We all have in our heads that we can't go to mental health and we can't go that because we'll lose the ability to hold a rifle or stand next to each other, go do training or lose our security clearance or things like that.
Yeah.
And these are all just symptoms of war. But that at the end of the day, our job was to kill people.
Yeah.
As the army as a whole, their job is to kill people.
Yep.
And we are very good at that. And we are very bad at everything else.
Yeah. That's one thing I always said, when people, talk to people and stuff about the military. And I said, listen, the military does a great job on turning on that killer instinct, we'll call it, like to really rewire your brain. I mean, that's what they're doing at basic and AIT and whatever else in the training that you're doing is they're rewiring your brain in order for you to be combat effective or, social lethality and all those types of, phrases and terms that they come up with. But like you said, though, it comes with a cost that was either ignored. Well, most likely it was ignored because they knew that it would happen because on the back end, when you send soldiers home, like, when we came home, they gave us a 2-week reintegration to society bullshit training, check the box type training. And guess what soldiers were doing every night, during those 2 weeks? Freaking out drinking. Yeah, getting hammered. And I'll never forget, when we had the VA up, at the podium, it's funny. It's literally, I'm sure when you demob, you have that piece of paper and you check off, everywhere you go because that's, you got to initial, make sure that they initial that way you're in the green so you can get cleared. But I remember the VA stand up there and they were like, yeah, if anyone has issues and blah, 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 come talk to us. And, and then we'll keep you on base for longer to get you treatment. And everyone's looking at each other like, why do we want to fucking stay on base? Like, we want to get the fuck out of here. And unfortunately, the bad news was one of our soldiers did actually admit, raised his hand, went into the booth, the privacy booth, and they ended up holding him. But they held him on frickin' at Fort Dix, New Jersey for like 6 months from what I heard. And they put him in a platoon, like again, I don't know if it's 100% true, but what we heard was they put him in a platoon of like the ones who were either deserters or were non-deployable, and he was treated like shit, basically. Like, here you have a dude who just came back from fucking Iraq and you put him in a fucking rear detachment full of, guys and gals that didn't want to deploy, and that probably made him 100 times worse as a result. So he never, the way we learned, he never really got treatment. He just got, stayed on base for like 6 months. So the system itself at the time, and again, I'm talking just in our time, was already broken as is. Never mind now. I mean, you went in much later than me. I'm assuming nothing really changed.
No, I don't think so. I had my own path that I was trying to make, and I just wanted to clear one thing up, or not that I just didn't touch on it. I like to be very upfront.
Yeah.
I never got to go to combat. I never got to deploy. I worked my ass off to go to combat with an ODA, and it just wasn't in the cards. And then I got hurt, and it wasn't there. So I try to be very upfront with that, so everybody thinks I'm referencing thing. All my combat experience is secondhand and from talking to my buddies about it, and things like that. But so that story you told, right? That's another thing that feeds into that stereotype that, oh, you're going to be demolished or demoted or whatever the fuck when you go reach out for help. How many people do you think that story went through before it got to you?
Oh, I mean, it went through probably, I'd say by the time it got to me, it already went through hundreds of people.
So if I tell 2 people something, it's not exactly what I say. They're remembering the memory of me telling it to them. They're not actually remembering the original event.
Yep.
So it's going to get diluted, and then that feeds into these stereotypes, and then it gets back down to the private again. So it'll go all the way up, go all the way down, or around the world twice before the truth has a chance to get out of bed. And what's the message now at the private level or the sergeant level? I can't go to mental health.
Yeah.
Or this ridiculous thing is going to happen to me.
Yeah.
It may or may not have happened to that soldier, but that's the message that got down to the bigger force is suck it up.
Yeah.
Because you don't want something worse to happen to you. Well, fuck. I mean, something losing your shit on your family is a pretty bad thing to happen to you too. If you don't take care of your mental health, that's going to really affect your life.
Yeah, I mean, now on the first responder level, the law enforcement level. Now, I've been almost 20 years now as a in law enforcement. I'm a sergeant at work, and again, all the jobs that I was blessed to do, whether DA task force, SWAT teams, stuff like that, and we don't have breaks, right? Because we're basically on full time 24/7, so to speak, where, sometimes I have to work a double, 16 hours, out on the road in a medium-sized city that is relatively busy. We do have our moments, shootings, shit like that, homicides here and there. And even as a detective investigating, some horrendous crimes and stuff like that, those things, take a toll mentally on you as a law enforcement officer, and the issues in the first responder community, I mean, is far darker than the military, and in my view, because I'm kind of looking at both lenses, both sides of it. It's because on the law enforcement first responder side, there's this huge stigma. The minute you say, I need help, basically you're damaged goods, your job is no good. Now you got to, go to a mental health facility to try to get help, and maybe you might be able to come back to work. And a lot of high performing officers and individuals don't want that, right? But again, how do they treat their symptoms? With booze. Booze or gambling or other destructive methods of coping, because they do not want to be labeled. And the suicide rate for first responders is nearly as high as veterans, and it's not talked about enough, or viewed enough, because it's one of those, like, it feels half the time like this dirty little secret that no one really wants to address, even though it's there. So that's kind of on my lens how I see both ends of it.
The general population they don't think about the police and the firefighters and the paramedics until, they need to call 911, right?
Yeah.
So it's not really a thing that's paramount. So everybody just kind of goes along with their lives, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's best that you don't need the cops showing up to your house, and you're not seeing accidents all the time, or shootings and things. That's kind of how you want it. But I had a cop on the other day, and we deploy, and there's a big buildup to go do that Super Bowl event, right? Whether it's teaching a partner force or going to combat or things like that. But police, not only do they work their shift, they live in the area that they work after that.
Yep.
So you're at the grocery store after they're off with their kids, and they see somebody that they locked up 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And can you imagine the adrenaline spike when you panic when you've got your kids there?
Yeah.
And this probably happens once a week.
Oh yeah.
And you're fully stressed out, and then you have to calm down and go be normal at home. But then you got your shift the next, you can't sleep. Now you're not getting full sleep.
Yep.
Whereas the human body doesn't cycle that way. You can't calm down, and cortisol dump. Now you feel like shit. Now I got to go to sleep. Now I got to shift. Oh, now I got to work a double.
Yep.
So it's just something, and it's no fault of the general population. It's just something you don't think about.
No.
It's because you don't have to deal with it. Everybody goes on with their lives, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just, I don't know. Is there any way to fix that? Probably not.
Yeah.
Because that's also the job.
Yep. I mean, that's 100% true. I mean, that's all the job. But, on my end, I see it as, on the politics end, right, where it was all of a sudden, and it's starting to swing the other way, but it's all of a sudden was hip to shit on first responders and cops, and every cop is bad, and we're gonna downsize them, and we're gonna try to kick them out, or whatever the rhetoric was in the country at the time. And that also played a huge role in what's going on in the first responder and police communities and stuff like that. Is in the end, the public doesn't know what it doesn't know, right? I mean, they just, again, like you said, they live their lives, they do their thing, and that's it. And which that they should. That's kind of the nature of being a civil servant and or a military member is, yeah, you take on that burden to protect those that, to live their lives, with the freedoms that, that they were given, that were God given, and move on with their lives. But for the warrior type, for the, civil servant type, the guardian type, they, I think what needs to happen, I mean, it's not really a fix, but what needs to happen is the realization that when we're involved in a critical incident, when we're involved in this, like, give the proper break. Right? Give the proper, hey, go see the counselor, for a couple days, get your mind back right, versus, you go to a call and it's a cis death, right? Infant, 6 months old, or whatever. And then immediately after that, you got to go to a sudden death. This guy had a heart attack and now died, and his family's in front of him crying and screaming, right? Then you go to a shooting the next day and you're dealing with that. So it compounds over and over and over again. So, I mean, what is the answer? I mean, I don't know. Also, yeah, it is the job, but it's also paramount, I think, for leaders and others to recognize in their own troops who needs like a little, like, put them on a quiet sector, right, versus the busy sector. That those types of kind of resets.
You know as well as all I do, most police forces are manned at 100%. Well, if you're manned at 100% and one person goes down, the other people have to fill that hole to bring it back up to 100. So there's no room in the scheduling of staffing, the manning, or the budget to fill a gap if somebody goes down. And you would be like, well, I can't let that happen because something bad might happen. One of my coworkers, and it's different when you say coworkers when you're in a civil service job like that, because these are people, these are your family.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're not there for them and something bad happens to them, that's going to really you're going to feel like shit for the rest of your life. And you're not going to let that happen.
Yeah.
So you're not even going to say anything. You're not going to raise your hand and say, because you're afraid of not only missing out on the next opportunity, but you're afraid of survivor guilt.
Yeah.
On your own part, if something does happen, which it will happen, eventually something will happen.
Yeah.
And if today's the day that there's a shooting and an officer down and you're not there and you could have been, well, then that's going to be much worse down the road. So you know that people won't raise their hand. They won't take a knee because they just won't make that hole in the schedule.
Yeah.
And you can blame budgets or you can blame Manning or whoever, or the people that make the rules, but there's a big thing like not in my backyard, right? And every time it comes up for a budget and they go, well, I don't want to pay more in taxes. Well, it's going to benefit this and this and this. Well, those people have their problems in their life just the same as you have yours. And they're going to make a decision based on their life and it doesn't concern yours. So there's also a whole mess of things that go along with it. I don't know if there is a solution.
Yeah.
That's
the problem. I think the solutions end up being manufactured, like made up, by I don't know, the powers that be, we'll call it, because they're not real solutions. Like, like over here in where I live in our state, Massachusetts, they require now, put into law that is required as part of our in-service 4 hours of wellness training. It's like 4 hours of wellness training once a year. That's not going to do a thing. And the wellness is just going to talk about what happens when your body goes through stress and blah, 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 and stuff like that. But once a year, that's
on top of an 8-hour shift. So you're working a 12-hour day that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
it's laughable, like I laugh, we all laugh about it. Like, yeah, this is the answer, but really it's not.
Everything I've heard and talking to buddies of mine that train police and to actual police, generally, due to budget constraints, personnel complaints, you guys are undertrained and you're not quiet about it. You speak up about it. It's just there's nothing that's going to change about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that's the fact. And that's the realization eventually, most senior guys, again, the high performers start to realize, and that's why they burn out quick. We all burn out quick. We don't stay long, unfortunately. This career, a 20-year career, never mind adding another 10 to get to 30. Good luck with that. Like, there's a reason why that old salty cop is salty, from all the shit that, he or she has seen in a span of even 10 years on the job, especially if you're in a busy location like, South Central LA or New York, Boston, medium-sized cities. 10 years weighs you down. Even 5 years weighs you down. Even, we had a brand new kid, a new guy more, we went to a call that, a woman unfortunately she had a miscarriage, she was pregnant, if she was pregnant for 6 months, had a miscarriage. So what you saw is literally an alien, on the floor gasping for air. And, this officer, he looked at me, he's like, Sarge, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, so I can tell he was starting to go down that rabbit hole of, what else could I have done? Like, oh, there's nothing, bud. Like, hey, this is as much as you can do is just to comfort her and let the EMTs do their job. Even the EMTs said, there's nothing we could do with this. Like, there's really nothing. So it's also, I think, on the leadership, like, sergeants, lieutenants, whatever on the job, to also monitor their own people too. That way they don't kind of spiral, right? Where you talk to them and tell them like, no, this is what you did. You did it right. Don't second guess yourself.
Leadership's job. If you're in any leadership position and you have people that report to you, you work for them. They don't work for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So you need to be responsible for monitoring when they need to take a break, when they need to take a knee, and have your finger on the pulse of how that. It's not always going to be easy or difficult. They're not going to tell you the truth.
No.
Like I said earlier, they're going to want to be there and complete. For the people that are invested, right? That want to do this because they really want to do the job. They're invested and they're not going to want to sit to the side.
Yep.
And your job as a leader is to, have you ever heard like we're a product of our own success?
Yeah.
We keep succeeding even though we have less and less resources.
Yep.
Well, that's such a negative thing because we keep getting the job done, even though funding will get cut, or our rounds for the range will go down, or you'll lose you lose a officer, you're staffed less, or things like that, but you keep getting it done. Well, all of a sudden you go, how did we get this far? But it was just this slow descent into inadequacy that got us here. Yeah. And it wasn't a quick thing. Every time, a major event happens, that's a shit everybody notices. Yeah. But a slow decline, nobody notices that. No. You'll stay at a slightly shitty job for 40 years and then retire and be like, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
But you won't stay at a really shitty job for even a week.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing with all of the other things. A decline of funding or wherewithal, or the quality of the people that are applying for the job even.
Oh my God, that has gone so down. I've even heard like military, even SF is having issues with the recruitment of quality candidates because just the decline is there now. I mean, like for first responders, unfortunately now it's like scraping the bottom of the barrel to try to find somebody who's got a pulse and can talk, to do the job.
Yeah, yeah. It's tough to find, and this is not anything about me, but I've met many people just like me in the military and in special operations. I started working when I was 12 with adults, construction. You grow up real fast and learn, how to kind of deal with stress because they're yelling at you like you're an adult when you're 12 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you graduate high school, you're still working that, and then you get into bartending, and then you learn how to talk to people, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to join the military now. And then you learn all those skills. I met many people like that, but that is not a typical path anymore.
No.
And that's whether it's the culture or whatever it is. And I'm not saying there's no one out there like that. If you're at home, that's fucking awesome. Good for you. You're fucking learning valuable skills on how to talk to people and have interpersonal relationships.
Oh, yeah.
But there's just less of it now.
Yeah.
And that shrinks your pool of people that would go into the military, that would volunteer for these positions, that would want to serve their community or be an EMT. Being an EMT is a rough job.
Oh, yeah.
You see some crazy shit.
Yeah.
And as you said earlier, when you see something traumatic and having to deal with that being able to deal with a traumatic situation takes some very strange training, and it takes a lot of apathy at having experienced things, horrible things, over and over and over again. That's something you can't teach to people. No. And most people, when they see it, they don't want to ever see it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, is the military having a problem? Yeah. They're always complaining about something though. So whatever.
Yeah,
they'll figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. So let's transition a little to talk about lesser known operators. Kind of what drove you to to start something like this?
I've always wanted to just interview special operations guys or gals, and I think we are some of the most interesting, capable, smartest people that that America or in the likes of has to offer. The American military is fantastic, and special operations is no exception. There's some top performers, and there are some great people with great stories that did extraordinary things that no one has ever heard of. And there's other branches within special operations that people aren't aware of. And there's people with great stories. And I just want to do exactly what the name of the podcast alludes to: lesser known operators. There's some famous people out there, and I'll have them on my show too. But the base of the show, I want to get the podcast so big that special operations dudes or dudettes, when they get out of the military, they can send me a DM and say, hey, I've got this thing starting up. I'm just getting out. I was in this unit. And if 100%, if they send me a message, we will record an episode. No matter how big the show gets and how busy we are, you'll get on the schedule and you will be able to record an episode. I will never say no to a special operation. As long as you were on a special operations role in a special operations unit, you can 100% always come on the show. Because I asked somebody to come on their show once, they told me no. And I don't want that for anybody else coming from my field, because when I got hurt, my sergeant major and my commander and a lot of people did a lot of things they didn't have to do to keep me in the military, and did a lot of things to support me. And I want to do the same thing for other folks when they need help.
Yeah. So when did this kind of start? When did you start Lesser Known Operators?
Like a couple days into the new year.
Okay, so you kind of, I think you did say earlier, you just woke up one day and was like, I'm going to start this.
I just was like, today's the day. And episode 18 comes out tomorrow. I've got, I think, 12 or 13 episodes in reserve recorded. I'm trying to record 3 to 5 episodes a week. When I get to 20 episodes in reserve, we'll probably do 3 a week released.
Yeah.
Just to keep, so they're staying kind of within the time frame that they're being recorded.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think I love doing it. I love talking to people, and it helps me kind of get better at speaking. I love getting up in front of people and talking.
Yeah.
And the more time I can get in front of a screen or interviewing people, it just helps with that transition and the recall for information and way to structure a sentence and structure a paragraph and how to hold people's attention and tell a story.
Yeah.
And I said, I never went to combat. I never got blown up. I don't have any of those cool war stories, but I do have the ability to get up in front of people and talk. And not a lot of guys have that. And I feel like I was an example when I was in the military and the job I was in and the role, and people looked up to me that I didn't know. And I still have that obligation to people that look up to me now to be the best that I can be the best veteran I can be, and still be a former Green Beret.
Yeah, that's an honorable thing. That's the paying it forward. I've met a lot of guys and gals in this kind of circle that in the end, that's all they really want to do is pay it forward. Being I've had some remarkable people on Project Sapient to talk, and the same theme always seems to come up. It's like, just paying it forward for, surviving whatever, or even, people having their backs, and they want to pay that forward, and it's something really, it's something to be said about that, in this kind of environment and this kind of circle, because you don't really see that out in the world as much. That's kind of thought that I had.
Yeah. We're all the culmination of everybody that kind of mentored us when we were coming up through the service. And if you had good mentors and they took care of you and they taught you the kind of the right way to take care of people, then you're going to be the product of that down the road. And I just think that we were this level of professionals when we were in, and a lot of guys and gals get out and they either keep that up or maybe they're tired and they don't want to do it and they just want to go back and work on their chicken farm in the woods, and that's fine too. That's good. You did everything your country asked of you.
Yeah.
I feel like I failed. I 100% feel like I failed in everything I wanted to do, and I want to make up for that. And I've interviewed a few people that thought that. One guy, when he was a team sergeant, thought he did a bad job, so he resolved to write a book about the position and gather information and try and make the position better after he was done with it.
Yeah.
And I want to make the image of a Green Beret better when I'm done with it. And so do a lot of people that I talk to, and not just Green Beret, special operations, and uphold everything in our lineage and our heritage and everything that's good in everything that we do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's it's like similar with what Chuck's doing, right? With the Objective RTA and some of the work that he's doing is just bringing it back to, being a decent human being, being, a good individual, a good person for humanity, in the end. That's something very admirable that everybody should strive to do in a world that is so ego driven. It's very rarely that that people, certain individuals like yourself, Chuck, and some others that I've met, that are willing to continue the lineage that you guys have, or even the ability to pay things forward even after service.
Yeah. The other side of it is you're gonna fucking die. Right? One day you're going to die, or you're going to be too old to do the things that you want to do. And you're going to look back, and that's going to be real torture. Yeah. Looking back when you're in the retirement home and saying, oh, I should have done that, or I should have done this. And what did it take for me to set this up? a mic and a screen and a couple things, and something I've always wanted to do. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
These barriers that we put up, I get it. Life gets in the way, but figure out how to do it. Figure out how to do the thing that you want to do, because your fucking work doesn't give a shit about you. Your family does, and your friends and the people that want to see you succeed. Your job doesn't care about you. Maybe if you're the owner, that's a different thing. Maybe you should keep the thing going. For the people that work for you. Yeah. But in the general scheme of things, your work does not care, and they'll replace you tomorrow. And if you're not building something that you're going to be proud of later in life, you're not getting any more time, and you that's it. You're going to run out, and there's a good chance when you close your eyes, that's it. No do-overs, nothing afterwards. Just you have the memories or whatever you believe in. So make this one. What's that quote? Right? It's a shame that there's only so many years in a life, but if you do it right, that's going to be enough.
Yeah,
I kind of butchered that quote, but if you live your life right, once is going to be enough. And I don't know, but I haven't always been like this, right? Like, I quit drinking just over a year ago, like 52, 53, 54 weeks ago. And I was not a great person. Some of those things from the military, like, gets better of me. And I just want to make up for that also.
Yeah.
And to, like, if I can turn it around, other people can turn it around.
Yeah.
And just to be like an example and just show that I'm not who I was.
Yeah.
And make up for some things that get the better of me. So kind of a ramble there.
No, I mean, it's good. I it reminds me. So earlier this week, I read this quote and I really liked it by Carl Jung. And the quote goes, "The sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being." So it's one of those things where, for me, what it spoke to me, and I even wrote it, in my journal. I wrote, hey, fan the flames and ignite the will and resolve in those you mean to inspire or help. Move away from victim mentality and embrace being a survivor. Find your own purpose, explore everything in order to find oneself. So to me, that's what this quote said, and that's the thing. Like when we, when we see something, we want to do something about it, right? That's just the way we are, right? The way we are built. And it could be anything. Like you said, it could be, as a high performer, you're like, yeah, I got to keep going. I got to keep doing something. Or like you said, you go back to your chicken farm and you just be you, and which is great, and everyone has their own path that they choose. And like you said, it is only one life. And, I always go with my battalion commander. I remember when I was young, he told a group of us, we were all NCOs, and he told all the NCOs, he's like, what legacy do you want to leave behind? What do you want to be remembered as, when you're being dug up in the dirt, when you're being buried? Are you going to be remembered as just average, just the dude who did whatever? Or are you going to be the type who was just always hard charging and taking care of others and taking care of your family and, being that type of, essentially that light in that darkness?
Yeah. What are we going to leave behind? And how do I know I'm on the right path? Yeah. Right. And it's real easy. People ask, how do I know I'm doing the right thing? When there's not enough time in the day.
Yeah.
That's when you know you're doing the right thing. When you go, oh, fuck, I got to go to sleep. So I got to get up in the morning. And then you wake up, you go to the gym, and you get home, you go, shit, I'm running out of time. There's none of that. That's when you know you're doing something that's because the time's going by so fast.
Yeah.
That's why everybody, when I talk to them about how did your time in the military or your time in service go by too quickly? Yeah. They can say, oh, yeah, it was shitty and they had these things, but man, they have fond memories of it and it went by in fucking seconds.
Yeah.
They were doing something that they really wanted to do.
Yeah.
For the most part. And there's going to be bad days, but you want to have more good days than bad days. I know I said a lot of cliches in here. If anybody listening at home, they consider me hate mail.
Yeah, I do the same thing. So, but the thing is, though,
there's a reason for them because they're catchy and they're easy to put into the dialogue of life, I guess.
No, that's 100% true. 100% true. But before we wrap up, what I'd like to do is kind of, give you time to talk more about, if you have episodes coming up, what's next for lesser known operators, what do you have coming up that, my listeners can jump on yours and, to look forward to?
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Lesser known operators. You can find us on all the socials. My main one is Instagram. The episodes are really just conversations. I do long interviews, long conversations. People, I find that like after an hour, the conversation changes and you just get into this deep conversation about what do you think about this and what do you think about that. But as I said, I'm in a mix of lesser known and more known people right now because I have to get the show known so that I can get the lesser known guests to come on the show. So it's kind of this push and pull relationship right now. But right now releases every Tuesday and Friday on all social media or on all streaming platforms, including YouTube. And if you are listening out there and you were a Green Beret, Ranger, Civil Affairs, PsyOps, Navy SEAL, MARSOC, Raider, Air Force Special Operations, even Coast Guard Special Operations, send me a DM on Instagram or an email at lesserknownoperators@gmail.com, and I will keep to that. We will record an episode no matter what.
Awesome. All right, folks. Well, that was Nick from Lesser Known Operator. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I've been looking forward to getting you on here, and we'll get you on. But give me a second. Let me do a quick outro, and we'll come right back. But there you have it, folks. Lesser Known Operator. Quite the story. An amazing mission that he's embarked on. So head over to him, help him spread the message. And like you said, if you are a special in special operations in the military in any of the branches, reach out to him and he'll get you on the show because as he said, he wants everybody to have a chance to tell their story as the lesser known operator. All right, folks, everybody stay safe. Stay safe.